Welcome to Just Healing, where we rediscover humanity in the conversation around trauma and celebrate all the unique ways we love and heal. I'm one of your Season 2 hosts, Dr. Debra. Let's listen, let's learn, let's heal.
After the first verdict, his earnings increased by 517%. And so what was the message there? Our society as a whole has this very peculiar relationship with those that we deem to be celebrities, that we deem to be stars. And we seem to want to give them a pass, even when the behaviors that they exhibit are behaviors that we know are wrong. It has to stop.
So I am here today with Al Edwards, who is my longtime friend, my colleague. I have known him for years, and we are here to talk about R. Kelly and talk about it from an organizational standpoint, from a religious standpoint, and from a Black community standpoint. And so, Al, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, hello, Debra, and it's great to be with you. I'm Dr. Albert Edwards III. I'm an organizational psychologist. I am a business owner, the founder and CEO of Seventh and Hope Consulting. We are a leadership development and executive coaching firm based in Southern California. Debra, you and I have had the pleasure, and it's been my honor to have known you now for the better part of 15 years. I recall us working together and opening up the Los Angeles campus of the Chicago School of Professional Psychology many years ago. You and I worked together on a number of projects, especially in the area of strategic planning with many nonprofit organizations in and around Southern California. And so it's great to be with you today. Looking forward to our conversation, albeit a very difficult, very challenging subject that we'll be dealing with today.
Let me tell you, I have a hard time with this topic, but we're talking about R. Kelly and all of the things that happened. I don't want to just talk about the stuff that's out there, like the tapes. We all know about that, right? We all know that he's been convicted, but I really want to talk about, like, where did this come from? Why did this happen? Like, why did it continue to happen all of these years, right? Because, I watched, oh my God, the documentary. I've been watching this stuff in the news, and I was so overwhelmed. It took me a week to just get through all of the stuff about this topic, and it is just so overwhelming, but it had me really, really thinking, like, how did this keep occurring for so many years? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have several thoughts, Debra. First and foremost, let's keep in mind that nothing like this kind of behavior happens in a vacuum. People know what's going on. But the question is, do people speak up? Do people come forward? Do people speak power to truth when they know that something is not right? And in this particular case, so many people failed these young women, these young girls, on so many different levels, by not coming forward and by not speaking up when they needed to. You had a criminal empire. You had a criminal organization that was actually trafficking in young girls, in young Black girls. And so when people decide that they're not going to come forward, this kind of behavior just perpetuates. And in this case, they were taking direct orders from R. Kelly, meaning the people that worked for him in this organization. And let's keep in mind that every organization has a culture, right? And we've talked about cultures of organizations for years, you and I. And every organization has a culture. And every organization's culture is defined by its organizational values, underlying values. And in this case, the values of the organization went awry, and the values of the organization were dictated by R. Kelly. And so what R. Kelly wanted, R. Kelly got.
I agree. It's what R. Kelly wanted is what R. Kelly got. But the one thing I was watching in this is that people knew this was happening. right? And he had help. He had help to bury this. I mean, he had his brother going out and looking at this and getting him girls, and then people were just turning the other way. But there's something that people don't realize about minorities when they get famous or they make it, right? We kind of rally around to keep them where they're at because, oh my God, they got somewhere. Maybe they can help someone else, or but they got somewhere. People want to tear them down. Like, I saw a lot of that in the documentary, but I also experienced that in Black culture. And I'm wondering, could that have been going on in creating a different organizational climate within this problem?
It absolutely created an organizational climate of acceptance. Okay, it created a climate of acceptance. The longer this behavior continued, and the longer R. Kelly felt invincible, and the longer he felt as though he could not be touched, especially after being acquitted of the first trial, it gave him this sense of empowerment that he could continue doing whatever he wanted to do, and that he was untouchable. I even recall one of the lines in the documentary that said, "We can't afford to lose R. Kelly." Well, my goodness, you can't afford to lose R. Kelly, but you can afford to have and lose the lives of all these young women, Black women in the community. It did not make sense. They protected him. They protected him at every turn, and it was driven by greed. It was driven by money. It was driven by power. And these are the same kinds of dynamics that you see in organizations. You see leaders, senior leaders in organizations. I'm talking about from the top down, who drive the organization based on personal need. And I mean, it's all part and parcel of the Me Too movement, isn't it? Isn't it? Where suddenly, women are coming forward saying, yes, this happened to me too, and here's what happened. And in many, many, many cases, it was about what the personal power dynamic that exists inside of organizations. And the same thing happened inside of the R. Kelly organization.
Oh, absolutely. But, I'm wondering about those record executives, right? I'm wondering about all those people, who said, well, he's making us money, and they turned a blind eye to it. I mean, they have some responsibility to that, right? I mean, it's all about the money, but that fed this ego, that fed all of this. I mean, look at Aaliyah, right? We all knew she was underage. They posted that, right? And yet no one did anything. No one did anything about it. You don't blame the victim. She's a child. But what about all these other adults that were around, right? And I'm just sitting here thinking, if I was a principal at a school and he's walking around watching some girl play basketball, I wouldn't think that that's weird. But because he was famous, that brings in another layer, another component, right? So then he's famous. Well, people will start looking at our school. Everybody has this angle about themselves, right? So that goes back to those execs say, well, we have R. Kelly here. We have him on, as one of our artists. It makes them look good. But what about stepping out of yourself? Because that continued an organizational climate of it's all for me, right?
That's correct. Our society as a whole has this very peculiar relationship with those that we deem to be celebrities, that we deem to be stars. And we seem to want to give them a pass for some reason. We want to give them a pass even when the behaviors that they exhibit are behaviors that we know are wrong. You look at, you go back to O.J. Simpson. I mean, the number of times that he had contact with the police during the time of the relationship with his former wife. And he seemed to get a pass every time because he was OJ. So the similarities here, I think, definitely cross over. We don't want to lose R. Kelly. R. Kelly, represents success inside of the Black community. And we don't have a lot of success in the Black community. There aren't a lot of Black men who are achieving in the Black community. And so we can't afford to lose R. Kelly. Well, I would offer this, that if that is success, I would rather do without that kind of success.
That's not a role model, right? Like you just said, OJ Simpson, nobody wanted to put, what did they call him, the juice in prison or whatever, and it's like, that's not successful. I remember Charles Barkley once said, I am not a role model, and people like slammed him, but he's saying, I play ball. I do, go and do all these incredible things. Well, R. Kelly was incredibly talented, right? But this is not a role model for what we want people to look up to. This perpetuates so many things in society. And one of the things people keep saying, and I understand where they're coming from, because I am a Black woman living in a Black community, living in a world, right? But they're saying if these were Black girls, nobody would care. Well, he also had many different colors of people that he also victimized, but also the celebrity also foreshadowed a lot of this, and so, yeah, they're Black girls, nobody cares. But also you had that celebrity piece and that money piece of all the money he was driving in that changed how people looked at this, right? So we need to look at ourselves a little bit.
We absolutely do have to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, how did we fail so many of these Black girls? How did we fail these Black women? You touched on it just a moment ago when you talked about the fact that nobody cares because they were Black women. The injustices that have been done to Black women in this country going all the way back to slavery are profound. They are profound. Black women have been used and abused in so many different ways by slave masters for their own personal needs. And the paradigm, the concept of what a Black woman means in the United States, has just become such that they are less than important. And so when you don't place importance, when you don't fill a Black woman with love, with caring, with kindness, with importance, with value, then others outside of the community begin to do the same thing. And they look upon it as, well, it doesn't matter. If they're not taking care of their own, then why should we care?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. It's hitting my heartstrings, I mean, you remember when COVID happened and they took, the syrup bottles out and they took the, those dynamics, and I remembered standing in the grocery store and it wasn't there, and I said, oh my God, I never have to see that again. Because as a Black woman, I hit these stereotypes, right? I look like a mammy, or I am an angry Black woman, or I'm a child that needs to be taken care of a lot of times, right? Or, I'm overly sexualized, right? These are stereotypes that come with being a Black woman. But seeing that was so painful. And I kept telling somebody, people think, oh, it's just a syrup bottle. But imagine taking something so painful and traumatizing in someone's life and it's all over, blasted out, and somebody's making money from that.
That's right.
And then people stereotype that you're like that. And this happens with a lot of things, but putting it into the perspective of what we're talking about, that stereotype, those behaviors, those messages caused a lot of this to continue to occur within our community, within the world, within society, right? And there is a difference there, and then the celebrity adding on to that, right, caused a lot of this.
That's correct. And keep in mind, as I mentioned at the top of our segment, this was a conspiracy. This was racketeering. This was a case where so many people were involved. So many people knew, and yet no one spoke up. And that is the major failing of it all, that no one spoke up. The injustice that occurred for so many of these young girls who are now traumatized for years and years and years to come.
That will never be okay.
They will never be okay. And that is so unfortunate. And then you have the other aspect, the other dynamic of what were the adults thinking? What were their values? What were their values? How could they condone the behavior? I heard and have read about so many accounts of people who were interviewed who said, yes, we knew, we just couldn't speak up. Well, okay, so where was their value in this? What did they bring to this particular situation? The injustice is just so profound. And then when you think about the religious aspect, where was where were the Black leaders in the communities? What was the Black church saying in the community about this? I mean, it was just absolutely, there was silence on so many fronts. In Amos, that famous quote that we've often heard MLK quote about justice rolling down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. That was not the case here.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And for those of you who don't know, if you haven't read his bio, please, look at the information below it. Also, you can go to my webpage and you'll see all his information at drdebrawarner.net. But here's the deal. Al Edwards is also a minister. And so he's talking from the community, from being a psychologist, being a professional, but bringing all of that in here, because I can't imagine you going in there now speaking, to your congregation and playing R. Kelly's I Believe I Can Fly. But people still did. And people still do. After the verdict came in, his music was downloaded so much. And it's like, what are we doing as consumers? What are we saying by continuing to listen to that and we're being silent in the churches if we continue to play his music.
That's right. After the verdict, after the first verdict, his earnings increased by 517%. 517%. And so what was the message there? The message there was, he wasn't convicted, so therefore he didn't do it. And nothing could be further from the truth. And so what are you saying? That every young woman who came forward was lying about every situation, the patterns of behavior, the patterns of treatment, the disparity, the abuse. You can't make this up. But yet he still had the support from the community. And it was either you love him or you hate him. And it was hard to deal with.
It was hard to get through because that old saying, fool me once, right? That's on you. Fool me twice, it's on me. This is on us.
It's on us.
This is on us as a society about what we tolerate. This is on us as a Black community. This is on us as a world, right? We have to stand up. We have to do something, right? Beyond just not listening to his music, talking to the radio station about not playing it, which in the documentary, we saw some of that happen, but we have to continue to do that. We can't just say, okay, I'm not going to listen to it now.
You
can? I remember when the Michael Jackson scandal happened, and he wasn't convicted, but something in my gut said, you know what? If it did happen, I'm going to take a stand for this. And I didn't listen to his music. And I remember my daughter saying to me, why are you doing that? And I said, I don't know. I feel like I have to do something, right? I have to believe them, right? So this is my way of believing. And then all the other stuff came out, right? And then the Finding Neverland came out. And it's like, there's too many voices saying the same thing in the same ways, right? And then R. Kelly, look at how many ways this has been said with how many different people, how many different types of people, how many ages. There's no way a child would make that stuff up. And then adults corroborating it. Come on now. So Al, I ask you, what can we do as consumers? Because we are part of the organization of the world, right? So what can we do to change this and take a stand?
Well, I think first and foremost, Debra, and thank you for the question. First and foremost, this is an issue of leadership. This is an issue of leadership. John Maxwell, probably one of the foremost authorities and thought leaders in the area of leadership today uh, says this, and I use this quote in so many of my trainings and workshops, that everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Think about this. Had the right leadership been in place inside of the R. Kelly organization, the leadership that has the underlying values that says we're not going to promote a culture where we abuse young girls. We're not going to promote and sustain and support a culture where we value the mistreatment of women. Suppose that leadership culture and that leadership paradigm had been in place. None of this would have happened. But that leadership paradigm did not exist. And so, to your question, we have to make sure that when we are working with youth, when we are working with the children, that we are always, as a community and as a society, that we are instilling in them the values that are important. We're making sure that they are given support. We're making sure that they are told about the value they hold in our society. And that we have to make sure that we train them, we educate them so that they are aware of what's going on. Think about the degree to which human trafficking and sex trafficking is being committed on an international scale. How many Black women go missing every year? And we sit back and we wring our hands and we ask ourselves, why is this happening? Well, we need to educate, we need to train, and we need to develop leaders. And we need to develop leaders at a very, very young age so that they understand the value of people, they understand the value of just human nature so that they are not making the same mistakes that others have made.
Yeah, I agree. It starts from the young, and it starts from having leadership in the home. And then it starts from having leadership where you work, in your church, in your community, saying, we will not stand for this anymore. You will not do this. You will not be a part of our community if you do this. And we will not continue to support you. You know, yeah, you've made it out, you're famous, but we're not going to support you as a Black community because you're doing these behaviors. You know, that is the key. It's all in leadership, but there's leadership breakdown all over the place in his home life, his church, in his, school, in the record labels who knew something was going on, but they just kept turning the eye. If you knew, why did you keep going back? Why did you keep putting out his music? Right? You're giving him a weapon to have a criminal enterprise, to continue to do this and have this other side, this other life that he wanted to continue, and all of those girls are damaged. All of those women are damaged. All of the people around him are damaged because of this behavior, and it's irreparable. You can get better on your journey. You can heal on your journey, but you can't take something back. It's like once the words are out, once the act is done, you can't go back and change that. This has changed their lives forever, right? And it keeps happening. We have to change this cycle, right? It's just, it blows me away. Like, it really blows me away. And, one of the last things I want to talk about is why does this keep occurring? And beyond occurring, it occurs everywhere, right? But is there a component, because you touched on a little bit of it occurring more in our community, the Black community or communities of color, than in the world? Or is it that this just blew this up in our faces? Like, why? Why is this continuing to manifest?
The 2019 docuseries of Surviving R. Kelly was the turning point. I believe that it exposed such egregious behaviors in a way that we as a community had not seen before. And I think that we know that this has gone on inside of our community for decades and decades. It's gone on inside of the community at large.
Mm-hmm.
With the Me Too movement and the R. Kelly situation, I think that it has opened the eyes of so many people now, that there's a greater awareness of what's out there. And with this greater awareness, then I believe comes the potential for change. And the potential for change, I think, is that, as you pointed out, as a community, we will not tolerate this kind of behavior going forward. We will speak up as soon as this behavior is known. We will speak up, and we will fight for change. It should not have taken. It should not have taken. You think about this. Figure this from the time 1994, when R. Kelly's song hit the charts, "Bump and Grind," I think it was called. Okay, yeah, from I think it was 1994 to 2019. I don't know, 27 years. 27 years of this behavior persisted before the docuseries was made. And it took a docuseries to get leadership to pay attention. Okay, it took a docuseries to get leadership to pay attention. It took a docuseries for the legal system to really move aggressively, to move assertively, to really file charges to get this thing resolved. And so here we are over a 27-year period of time with so many lives damaged and some permanently. And I think that it is the saddest commentary on our society that one could even imagine.
It's just sad. And one of the things that we have to do is to start talking. We have to stop protecting our brother, or stop, saying, well, yeah, but he made it. You can't. Those thoughts right now are barbaric because it continues this, right?
Well, Deborah, Deborah, it's one of those things where growing up in the Black community, something you probably heard that I heard, we don't talk about things that are going on in our family. We don't talk about the things that are going on in our home. Okay. It's no one else's business. We don't get in anyone else's business. They don't get in ours. We don't talk about it. And I suggest that is precisely what happened in this case. That we're not going to talk about this outside of the R. Kelly organization or the family. We're just not going to talk about it. We know what's going on. We know it exists, but we're not going to talk about it. And so this is what happens in terms of, as you pointed out, when we don't talk about it, and we have to, absolutely have to.
Yeah. We have to get rid of that fear, that institutional fear that we've had. And I understand why it's there. Dude, it's valid. But yeah, it's valid. But unless we begin to make a change within our community, the changes can't occur outside of us either. We all have to work together as a society, right? Because this has to stop. This has to stop. And people have to realize that we have to value ourselves and value each other.
Right. We have to stop. We have to stop sexualizing, objectifying women, and we have to stop doing it with Black women in particular. We have to stop.
We just have to be appropriate, men, women, all of that. We have to make a change in our society. This is just one thing that just blew up because of what all of us have gone through and witnessed due to this,
Oh, yes. There are many, many, many other R. Kelly type stories out there that have just not been told, that have not been exposed. I suggest there are many out there, and we as a society have to do much better in terms of stopping this kind of activity, stopping this kind of behavior, irrespective of who is committing it. It just doesn't matter who is doing it, it has to stop.
It does. And I agree. Well, thank you, Al, for this wonderful, wonderful talk. I'm hoping people get a lot out of this. And Al, is there anything else you want to add and tell people like where they can get a hold of you?
Well, you can get a hold of me at seventhandhope.com. Again, we are a boutique consulting firm that specializes in leadership development and executive coaching. We do a lot of work with many organizations. And Debra, as I mentioned at the top, you and I have done work with so many organizations over the years. And so, yes, contact me at seventhandhope.com if your organization is looking for a transformation in its leadership development, as well as executive coaching, which promotes and really helps leaders to develop and move forward in their careers.
I can say his work is phenomenal. I've been working with him for years. I have seen organizations change and transform. Like there are so many miracles that happen when you work with Dr. Edwards here. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for listening.